evening, everyone, students, faculty, esteemed guests, and of course the judges. My name is Trevor Geller, and before I begin, I'd like to first of all apologize for not being as well dressed as some of the other speakers in the room. Apparently I didn't get the memo to wear a full suit, but I hope that tonight my topic will be highly relevant to everyone in this room, as it is the need for higher education reform. For those of you who read the Vanderbilt Hustler, 2 months ago an article came out that suggested the disturbing notion that not a lot of learning actually takes place in college. This article based its findings off of the studies done and recently published in the book Academically Adrift, Limited Learning on College Campuses by Richard Arum, a professor of sociology at NYU, and Professor Josipa Ruksa, professor of sociology at the University of Virginia. Arum and Ruksa found in their study that almost 40% of college undergraduates, by the time they graduate, will have experienced little to no development of their critical thinking, complex reasoning, and writing skills. These skills, commonly known as higher order skills, or as I'll refer to them as core skills, are significant because, according to an article in the Harvard Business Review by Peter Capelli, he stated that these were some of the most important skills for individuals to possess in today's workforce. Before I go into or present to you my solution for this issue, I'd like to talk about some of the possible reasons for why this issue exists. I believe there are two main reasons why not a lot of learning actually takes place in colleges. The first of which is because currently most universities and colleges operate on a grade-based system. Now the grade-based system is the one that we're probably all most familiar with. It's everything, being able to earn everything from an A to an F in your classes. The issue with this system is that how students have to make the decision between choosing to get a high GPA in a course or actually learning something in the course. And unfortunately, a lot of times that doesn't go hand in hand together. So a lot of times students, rather than trying to learn something in their course, will only do what's necessary to achieve that high GPA. And a lot of times what that sacrifices is students won't pursue academic interests or won't challenge themselves and take academic risks because they're afraid that it might negatively impact their GPA. As stated in the Harvard Crimson in a 2008 article describing Harvard Law School's change from a grade-based system to a pass-fail system, they stated that students had a fear of being penalized. They weren't challenging themselves academically, they weren't pursuing their academic interests to its fullest extent because they didn't want to risk getting a worse GPA. Another factor that I believe is important to look at as to why students don't actually learn in college is because of the nature of our society, and that is extremely hyper-competitive. What I mean by hyper-competitive is that if you look at a lot of students, a lot of times students will go to high school and they'll do extremely well in their high school because it's a means to that next step, which is college. And if you look at a college like a Vanderbilt University, students come here and they perform well and get a good GPA because they want to go on to a great graduate school, they want to go on to find that great job. The problem with this is there's no impetus for students to actually learn anything while they're in college. All they have to do is the bare minimum in order to succeed and move on to that next level. Another issue that the hyper-competitive society presents is how do students distinguish themselves? An issue with this, and if you look at Vanderbilt University specifically, a lot of our students here compare very well to each other. So a lot of times students will start double majoring or triple majoring, and they'll add 1 or 2 minors on top of that because they're trying to find that way to distinguish themselves. And the issue with that is it becomes more about how many courses they can take and how many majors and minors that they can have versus what they're actually learning in those courses and actually taking away something from those courses and those core skills that Arum and Ruksa say that college students are no longer achieving. Before I go into the solution that I'd like to talk about tonight, I'd like to say thank you to 2 professors here at Vanderbilt, Professor Catherine Donato, who's the Department Chair of Sociology, as well as the Director of Medicine, Health, and Society, and Professor Greg Bars, who's a Professor of Ethnomusicology, as well as the Vice Chair of the Faculty Senate. Both of them were instrumental in helping me determine my solution for the problem of not a lot of learning taking place in college. I'd also like to state that as you're listening to my speech, please know that this is not something or a change that can occur overnight. It has to be a gradual, step-by-step process just because of the nature of how ingrained it is into our society, as well as our higher education. And also note that while I believe that this solution should be applied to colleges and universities across the country, I think I'll look primarily at how it would be implemented here at Vanderbilt University. So to begin with, the first change that I believe needs to take place is we need to lower graduation requirements and not allow students to take as many classes. So currently at Vanderbilt University, students are allowed to take anywhere between 4 to 6 classes or 12 to 18 hours. I believe that this number needs to change to anywhere between 3 to 5 classes or 9 to 15 hours. And what this will do is allow students the opportunity for deeper exploration in their classes, allow students to engage their professors more, and ultimately allow students the freedom to pursue those academic interests and the academic interests that they were previously not able to pursue because of the number of classes that they were taking and the requirements of those classes. And the place where I got the number for 3 to 5 classes came from looking at peer institutions, most notably Brown University. The second step that I believe we need to take in order to create a solution to this problem, and this step needs to occur concurrently with the lowering the graduation requirements and not allowing students to take as many classes, is professors need to assign more reading and writing in their courses. And as the majority of you in the audience are students, I know you're probably thinking that that's crazy. But what I found through my research is that if you lower the number of classes that students are taking, but you assign more reading and writing in those classes, it's going to allow the students to engage the professors more. They'll go into deeper exploration in their classes, and ultimately they'll pursue those academic interests that they otherwise might not have pursued because they were so caught up on just getting that grade in order to move on to the next level. Another thing that I believe it will do is allow students to develop those core skills that, as the article stated and as A. Roman Rooks' book state, that students aren't developing those higher order and core skills. So the third step that I'd like to implement is probably the most controversial of all of them, in that I believe that Vanderbilt University eventually needs to change the grading system it uses. Currently, Vanderbilt University operates on the grade system that we all know, that students can get everything from an A to an F, but I believe we need to change to a pass-fail system. And the pass-fail system I'd like to change to is the one currently used at Yale Law School, in that students can receive everything from a honors to a high pass to a pass to a fail. And while this sounds very similar to the system we already have, in that you would just exchange honors for an A, high pass for a B, etc., what it would do is it would take the GPA out of the equation. There would no longer be a numerical value associated with the distinction that the student was getting in the course, so students would no longer be able to be ranked. And this is significant because students would no longer have that fear of being penalized in their courses. They'd be able to pursue academic interests and take risks in their classes that they previously wouldn't have taken because they were so afraid of getting a worse or receiving a worse GPA in that class. Another reason why I believe that the grading system needs to be changed is if you look at Dan Pink, who did a video documentary in 2009, and Dan Pink was the former speechwriter for Vice President Al Gore, as well as an author of many books on the changing workplace. He stated that intrinsic motivators will always outweigh extrinsic motivators. And what this means is that the extrinsic motivator of a student trying to perform well in a course only to receive that good GPA will not be as powerful as a student who is intrinsically motivated and genuinely has a love of learning and wants to perform well in that class because that's what they're interested in studying. And for that reason, I believe that the grading system needs to be changed to the pass-fail. Now, because of how controversial this change is, there's probably most of the disadvantages associated with this change, associated with my solution, will probably come with this change. The first possible disadvantage is that someone might state that if you take away grades, that students will no longer put effort into their courses. However, in a study that I found in the Journal of Association of American Medical Colleges, Dr. Lynn Robbins at the University of Michigan found that first-year students at the University of Michigan Medical School who were graded on a pass-fail system performed just as well as students who were graded on a grade-based system, which shows that it doesn't matter if students are graded on the pass-fail system or the grade-based system, because they will perform just as well. And if you look back at what Dan Pink talked about with the intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, you'll see that the extrinsic motivator of doing something for a grade is not as powerful as the intrinsic motivator of doing something because you're genuinely interested and want to pursue that academic interest. Another issue with this changing to a pass-fail system is how do you distinguish students in that system? And what I mean by that is if students are no longer assigned a GPA or a numerical value, it's difficult to distinguish between the two, or distinguish between two students. However, I believe that in this system, you're still going to have some distinction with the honors and the high pass, so you'll be able to look at that, as well as if you look at high schools and the reports that they give to colleges when students are applying to universities, it could be a same system in that Vanderbilt University or comparable universities could give a report to graduate schools or to a potential employer that would explain the system that students are evaluated on here. Now the final change that I would make in order to remedy the problem of students not learning a lot in college is that I would change from a major system to a concentration system. So the major system that we're all familiar with is the one where you need to take Class A, Class B, Class C in order to graduate with a major in a certain major. So a poli-sci major, you'd have to take certain poli-sci courses in order to do that. But I believe it would be prudent to switch to a concentration system in that students would no longer have to take a exact course load in order to accomplish that. They would have a lot more flexibility in their course selection and ultimately be able to take more ownership of their education because they could apply different courses to ultimately create a concentration. And the concentration would be such that students would be looking at a problem that they're interested in solving or a theme that they're interested in looking at versus something as strict or stringent as a major. So finally, I'm sure you're all tired of hearing me talking, but I really could go on all night about this, and I know that all of you have something better to do tonight, but I would just like to state for the faculty and adults in the room, I'd like you to remember back to when you were in college and the reason why you went to college, and hopefully that reason was because you were genuinely interested in learning, and I hope that with the students in the room, you'll help create a system in which students are allowed to pursue those academic interests and shouldn't be afraid to go out and try to test themselves and are okay with failing because there will no longer be an issue of that penalty associated with it. And for the students, I hope you guys ask yourselves, do I as a student want to go to college because I genuinely want to learn and I'm genuinely curious about what's going on in the world? Or do I only want to go to college because I want to get a good GPA so I can get that job that I really think I want? So ask yourselves that. Thank you.